Nearly 180,000 Russian military targets were struck by Ukrainian drone units in just 1 month, according to Ukraine's commander-in-chief. Whether every target was destroyed or simply attacked, the number points to one dangerous change on the battlefield. Russian forces may no longer be truly safe, even after the sun goes down. On the battlefield, Ukraine is expanding their way of fighting. FPV drones equipped with thermal cameras can detect movement even in darkness. On the other hand, reconnaissance drones can quietly follow infantry through forests. Strike drones and bomber drones can work together against supply trucks, defensive positions, artillery, and soldiers moving toward the front line. The danger for Russia is no longer measured only by explosions. The larger problem is that almost every movement can become a signal. A small infantry group crossing a forest, a motorcycle racing along a dirt road, or a supply truck traveling behind the front may all be detected before reaching their destination. In modern warfare, being seen first can matter more than moving first. Stay with this analysis as we look into the story of how Ukraine is trying to build a battlefield where constant surveillance turns speed, darkness, and camouflage into weaker forms of protection than they once were. If Russian forces can no longer rely on the night, the forest, or light vehicles to hide their movements, how can they continue to keep pressure on the front? Night is no longer a reliable shield for Russian forces in Ukraine because thermal FPV drones are turning darkness into another hunting ground. For a long time, darkness gave soldiers a basic form of protection. It made movement harder to see, it reduced the chance of direct observation, and it allowed small groups to cross dangerous ground with less fear of being spotted from a distance. Russian infantry could use the night to move through tree lines, reach forward positions, or bring supplies closer to the front. Trucks and light vehicles could also travel with fewer visible signs, especially on dirt roads or near forest edges. That advantage is now weaker. Ukrainian FPV drones with thermal cameras can search for heat instead of normal light. A soldier lying low in the grass may still leave a clear shape on the screen. A group moving through a dark field may appear as bright figures against a colder background. A vehicle that stopped under trees may still give away heat from its engine, exhaust, or metal parts. The night can hide color and detail, but it cannot easily hide body heat. This changes the first step of combat. Before a strike happens, someone must see the target. In many battles, that first moment decides everything. If Russian troops are detected while they are still moving, they may not have time to spread out, dig in, or call for cover. If a supply vehicle is seen before it reaches a forward position, the cargo may never arrive. If a small assault group is tracked before it reaches a trench line, the attack may break before it truly begins. The important point is not only that Ukraine has more drones in the air. The deeper change is about who controls visibility. On a modern battlefield, the side that sees first often gains the right to choose the next move. It can wait, follow, pass coordinates, send a strike drone, or bring in another weapon. The target, by contrast, may not even know it has already been marked. This is why night operations have become more dangerous for Russia. Darkness no longer means silence, and silence no longer means safety. For Russian commanders, this creates a difficult problem. Moving at night may still be safer than moving in daylight, but it no longer removes the threat. Units may have to travel in smaller groups, leave more space between vehicles, avoid open roads, and spend more time hiding under cover. These choices can reduce losses, but they also slow the mission. A route that once took minutes may take much longer if every stop, crossing, and tree line must be checked for drones. This pressure also affects planning. A unit that moves slowly may arrive late. A supply truck that waits too long may miss the window to deliver ammunition. Infantry that must crawl forward in small groups may lose the strength needed for a serious assault. The battlefield becomes less about one dramatic clash and more about constant exposure. Every movement must be planned as if someone may already be watching from above. That is why thermal drone warfare matters. It does not only destroy targets, it changes behavior before the explosion. It forces Russian forces to move with more caution, more distance, and more delay. In a war where timing can decide whether an attack succeeds or fails, losing the cover of night can become a serious operational problem. So the question is simple. What is more dangerous for a soldier at the front, being found by artillery, or being tracked by a thermal drone before he even knows he has been seen? The Lyman direction shows how Ukrainian drones are turning forest movement into a dangerous test for Russian infantry. Russian forces still need small groups to move through woods, narrow paths, and covered ground. This kind of movement has a clear purpose. Infantry can approach Ukrainian lines without sending a large armored column forward. They can search for weak points, get close to a trench, and try to build a small foothold before heavier support arrives. If that foothold survives, it can become the start of wider pressure on the front. But this method depends on one condition. The group must reach its chosen position before it is found. In the Lyman area, that condition is becoming harder to meet. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones can scan tree lines, watch gaps between forest belts, and follow movement along small trails. A group that looks hidden from the ground may still be visible from above, especially when it crosses open breaks or moves in a pattern that does not match the natural shape of the terrain. This is why the forest is no longer a simple shelter. Trees can block a direct view from a trench, but they do not fully close the sky. A drone operator does not need to see every soldier clearly at once. It may be enough to notice movement, track a direction, and hold the area under observation until a strike drone arrives. Once the group is marked, the forest can become a trap instead of protection. The most dangerous moment for Russian infantry is the approach. At that stage, they are not fully inside a defensive position, and they may not have strong cover prepared. They are carrying weapons and moving in small numbers. If an FPV drone reaches them during this phase, the group has little time to organize a response. Running deeper into the trees may delay the strike, but it does not always break contact. This changes the meaning of infiltration. In older battlefield thinking, a small team could slip forward, hide, wait, and then turn a small position into a problem for the defender. In Ukraine, the first part of that plan is now under constant pressure. The moment a Russian group leaves cover, it may enter a watched corridor. The moment it chooses a route, that route may become a target lane. For Ukraine, the goal is not only to hit soldiers after they reach the front. The more important goal is to stop the process before it becomes a battle for a trench. If Russian troops are struck while still moving, they cannot prepare firing points, bring up ammunition, or guide the next wave. The pressure is removed before it grows into something larger. That is a quiet but serious advantage. For Russia, the problem is difficult to solve. Larger groups are easier to see and attack. Smaller teams are harder to spot, but they have less firepower and fewer supplies. Moving slowly may reduce exposure, but it gives drones more time to search. Moving quickly may shorten the route, but it creates sudden motion that can attract attention. Every choice carries risk. This is the core of the Lyman fight. Russian infantry needs the forest to close the distance, while Ukraine uses drones to open that forest from above. The battle may begin before the first shot is fired from the ground. A team leaves its position, moves through trees, is detected by a reconnaissance UAV, and then a strike drone is sent toward the area. If that chain works, the infiltration ends before it becomes real pressure on Ukrainian defenses. Russian motorcycles and ATVs can move fast near the front, but speed does not always mean safety when drones are already watching the route. Russia has continued to use light vehicles to move infantry across dangerous ground. The reason is easy to understand. A motorcycle is smaller than an armored vehicle, and an ATV can pass through narrow paths, broken roads, forest edges, and soft ground where heavier machines may struggle. These vehicles can carry soldiers closer to a trench line faster than walking, and they can reduce the time spent in open terrain. This method also helps Russia avoid some of the risks linked to large columns. A tank or armored personnel carrier is loud, heavy, and easy to identify from the air. It often needs a clear road, support vehicles, and more space to move. A motorcycle group can split into pairs or small teams, then rush forward from several directions. On paper, that looks flexible, and in some cases it may help infantry reach areas that armor cannot enter safely. But drones have created a different problem. Light vehicles still leave patterns. They use tracks, road shoulders, field lanes, and gaps between tree lines. They raise dust, cut across open spaces, and often move along the same practical routes again and again. If Ukrainian reconnaissance drones have already studied those paths, a motorcycle does not appear as a surprise. It becomes a fast object moving through a watched corridor. The danger grows once the riders are detected. Motorcycles and ATVs have very little protection against FPV drones, shell fragments, or small explosive charges dropped from above. A soldier on a bike cannot easily return fire while steering at high speed. He cannot take cover inside armor, and he has only seconds to react if a drone dives toward the route. A quick turn may help for a moment, but it can also throw the rider into a ditch, a fence, or a minefield. This is the problem of speed. The faster the vehicle moves, the less time it spends exposed, but the less control the soldier has when danger appears. A rider may cover hundreds of meters quickly, yet one drone operator only needs to predict the road, wait near a crossing point, or follow the heat and motion of the engine. If the first vehicle is hit, the rest of the group can lose rhythm immediately. A narrow path that helped them move fast can suddenly block escape. Even abandoning the vehicle does not always end the threat. Once infantry leaves the road and runs into trees, the fight changes shape. A drone can circle above the area, follow the direction of movement, or wait for the next sign of motion. For Russian commanders, this creates an uncomfortable choice. Walking is slow and tiring, but riding creates noise, heat, and visible movement. Armored vehicles offer more protection, but they are easier to spot and more expensive to lose. Light transport sits between these options, and that is why it keeps appearing at the front. It solves one problem while opening another. The larger lesson is clear. On this battlefield, mobility is no longer judged only by speed. It is judged by whether the movement can stay hidden long enough to matter. If the sky has already mapped the road, watched the tree line, and prepared strike drones nearby, a motorcycle may only deliver infantry faster into a kill zone. So the question is worth asking. Are motorcycles and ATVs a smart Russian adaptation, or are they a sign that the army is being forced to use weaker vehicles because safer options have become too costly? The drone campaign in Donetsk and Zaporizhia is no longer focused only on soldiers at the front. It is increasingly aimed at the system that keeps Russian forces fighting every day. A frontline assault cannot continue without supplies arriving at the right place and the right time. Ammunition must reach artillery positions. Fuel must keep vehicles moving. Food, spare parts, medical equipment, and replacement troops all depend on transport routes that connect rear areas with active combat zones. This is why logistics has become one of Ukraine's main targets. Damaging the support system can weaken an attack before it reaches the battlefield. In the Donetsk direction, Ukrainian drone operations have increasingly concentrated on transport vehicles, supply trucks, defensive positions, artillery sites, and equipment hidden behind the front. These targets may not attract the same attention as a destroyed tank, yet their military value can be just as important. A truck loaded with ammunition that never reaches its destination can leave artillery units with fewer shells. This approach also places constant pressure on Russian planning. Commanders cannot simply think about the attack itself. They must also protect the movement that supports the attack. Every convoy may require additional security. Every supply route may need another reconnaissance patrol before vehicles begin to move. More time is spent checking roads, changing schedules, and selecting different paths. Those adjustments may reduce risk, but they also reduce speed. The pattern described in the Zaporizhia direction shows how this system works in practice. The process begins with reconnaissance rather than firepower. A surveillance drone searches for movement and identifies a suitable target. The coordinates are then passed to another team responsible for the strike. An FPV drone is launched toward the location, while additional unmanned aircraft may remain nearby to observe the result. If the first attack does not fully disable the vehicle or position, another drone can be sent to complete the mission. Instead of relying on one dramatic strike, the operation becomes a coordinated sequence with different drones performing separate tasks. This method increases efficiency because each operator focuses on a specific role. One crew watches the area, another prepares the attack. That creates a continuous cycle of detection, targeting, engagement, and assessment. The battlefield becomes connected through unmanned systems rather than isolated attacks. The larger objective is not simply to destroy equipment. Ukraine appears to be trying to reduce Russia's ability to maintain steady operations over time. An army does not lose strength only through battlefield casualties. It also weakens when supplies arrive late, repairs take longer, and units must wait for resources before continuing their mission. Every interruption forces commanders to make difficult decisions about where limited support should go first. This pressure spreads beyond one location. A truck that never reaches the front can affect infantry, artillery, and armored units at the same time. A damaged position may require engineers and recovery teams that could have been working elsewhere. Each successful drone strike can therefore create additional tasks for Russian forces without changing the front line immediately. That is what makes this campaign different from a series of isolated attacks. Ukraine is not only challenging Russian assault units, it is trying to interfere with the entire chain that allows those units to operate. If transport becomes slower, supplies become less reliable, and support units remain under constant observation, the overall pace of military activity can gradually become harder to sustain. So what do you think has the greatest value on today's battlefield? Is it a supply truck carrying ammunition, an artillery position supporting the front, or a warehouse storing the resources needed for the next operation? The real power of Ukraine's drone campaign comes from many small strikes working together until they become a system of battlefield pressure. A single FPV attack may look limited when seen alone. One vehicle burns, one position is hit, or one small group is forced to stop moving. On a large map, that may seem like a minor event, but modern war is not shaped only by the biggest explosions. It is also shaped by repeated losses that interrupt movement, slow decisions, and force an army to spend more effort on basic survival. Ukraine's drone operations now appear to work in several layers. Reconnaissance UAVs search for movement and identify targets. FPV drones deliver fast and accurate strikes against vehicles, soldiers, and equipment. Bomber drones drop explosives into trenches, shelters, and hidden positions. Interceptor drones try to stop Russian UAVs before they reach Ukrainian troops or infrastructure. Behind these aircraft, coordination teams connect the information, pass locations, and decide which weapon should be used next. When these systems are linked together, the result is not just a collection of flying machines. It becomes a network that can watch, decide, attack, and check the result. That is the difference between a drone video and a drone war. A video shows one strike. A system changes how the enemy moves before the strike happens. Russian forces must now think about whether a road has already been watched, whether a tree line is under observation, or whether a vehicle has been marked before it starts moving. This pressure can shape behavior even when no explosion is seen on camera. Russia still has ways to respond. Electronic warfare can jam signals or confuse drone control. Camouflage can make vehicles harder to identify. Smaller formations can reduce the damage from one strike. Night movement can still lower exposure in some cases. Decoys can pull Ukrainian drones away from more valuable targets. These measures can help, and Russia will likely keep improving them because the threat is too serious to ignore. But every response comes with a cost. Stronger electronic warfare requires equipment, power, trained crews, and protected positions. Better camouflage takes time and discipline. Smaller groups may be harder to hit, But they also carry less firepower and fewer supplies. Night movement can slow coordination. Decoys consume resources that could be used elsewhere. The more Russia adapts, the more complex each operation becomes. This is why many small drone strikes can have an effect beyond the visible damage. They force the other side to move slower, plan longer, and protect more routes. They increase the number of decisions required before a simple transport mission. They turn ordinary movement into a risky calculation. Over time, that can drain energy from an army, even if the front line does not change immediately. The broader lesson is clear. The battlefield is no longer decided only by who has more tanks, more artillery, or more soldiers in one place. Those weapons still matter, but they now operate under a sky filled with sensors and strike drones. The side that sees first can often choose when to attack. The side that reacts late may lose vehicles, supplies, and momentum before a larger battle begins. Ukraine's drone campaign is therefore not just about destruction. It is about exhaustion. It is about making Russia pay for every movement, every supply run, and every attempt to build pressure. If that pattern continues, the most important question may not be how many attacks Russia can launch, but how long it can keep launching them while being watched from above. The most dangerous change in Ukraine may not be one explosion, one destroyed vehicle, or one dramatic video. It may be the new reality that Russian forces are being watched almost everywhere they try to move. This drone war is no longer only about hitting targets after they appear. It is about finding them before they are ready. Night movement is no longer fully safe. Forest cover is no longer enough. Motorcycles and ATVs may give Russian infantry speed, but speed can become a trap if the route is already under surveillance. From Lyman to Donetsk and Zaporizhia, Ukraine is trying to turn movement into exposure. Infantry groups can be stopped before they build a foothold. Russia may respond with stronger electronic warfare, better camouflage, smaller teams, more decoys, and more night movement. But each answer brings another cost. Operations may become slower, harder to organize, and more expensive to protect. So the next phase of this fight may not be decided only by who has more tanks or more soldiers. It may depend on who can see first, strike faster, and force the enemy to move under constant pressure. If every road can be watched from above, how long can Russia keep pushing forward? Like, share, and subscribe to Military Force for more battlefield analysis on drones, weapons, and the future of modern war.